Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Cleaning Lady, Season 3, Episode 10. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of Tony's discovery last episode of she's trying to figure out initially what Jeremy's thing is. Like I said, she probably wouldn't immediately jump to FBI, but I was like, I don't think she'd think that's one of Ramona's people either, so I was like, now, because even her and Fee had the back and forth of like, is he like a, I don't know, like, what, no, he can't be, right? It's like, now Tony's like, yeah, even the, like, break-in at the shop and it getting destroyed and him showing up, because she's like, yeah, like, he said he was called by, like, the landlord or whatever, but I never bothered checking in, because, like, who would lie about something like that, you know? And why would he go through all of this, like, orchestrate all of this? And it's like, we literally had him take us to what Armand was, and it's like, now it's like you're playing into his hand. That's why the FBI showed up when they did. So, you know, that's a real kick in the teeth for Tony, like, the person she trusted in. And, I mean, it is super jacked up. I mean, Garrett strung her along, but not nearly as long. Like, she thought she had a friend and confidant, someone she could rely on, like, because it also makes it go, the advice he gave me in episode 8 to, like, get close to them. It's like, oh, he wanted me to get close to them so I could get close to the San Carter cartel for his purposes. And it's like, man, it's just, it's the ultimate betrayal, especially at a time when Tony lost a person she trusted more in this world. I mean, other than Fee and, you know, her family, like, she trusts him a lot, but outside of her family, the closest person that she ever trusted is gone, and that being Armand. So it's like, right, like, around that time, him being missing, like, she confided in Jeremy and thought she had someone, you know, not in the same capacity, but it still felt nice to have someone in your corner. And now it's like, oh, it was all a lie, and she feels manipulated and used. And now it's like, well, what do we do? Well, we can't destroy the listening device in the smoke detector because we don't want him to know that we're aware. And so they have to keep the cameras in place, everything in place. They have to be careful about how they talk. And I love they put on this little performance of, you could tell, like, once again, it's actors acting bad. It's so interesting when you have to act bad. I think there's actually this little quick shot, which I think it's so interesting. I was like, I think it's a blooper they kept in the episode. Is if you look, there's a moment where, like, Martha, you know, who plays Fee, is doing, like, her terrible acting, and you see this moment where Elodie is smiling and kind of like breaking a little bit, but then the camera cuts her in front of her and she's like very straight faced. At first I was like, is she? It's like, there's no way she'd joke about it, like be so joking about it when they're trying to be so serious. Because like the rest of the scene, she's dead serious. I'm like, oh man, I think that was a mistake they kept in the episode. But it's like, you could see her like smiling and kind of breaking a little bit. I think that wasn't meant to be in the episode. Because at first I was like, oh, is Tony joking and enjoying this a little bit? Like, oh, you know, like, oh, the acting's so terrible. It was like, no. It's just, I think she legitimately broke in the scene and they just kept it in the episode. I thought that was so, I was like, oh, that's so, because that caught me off guard. I was like, oh, we're making a little light of this situation, but like considering how like the next like cut of the camera like, you know, shows like, no, she's dead serious, means like, no, that was not meant to be in the episode. I still think it's kind of like funny. Like I said, it's only for like a couple of seconds you see like smile across her face, like she's kind of breaking, like she's laughing. I was like, it's actually really adorable. Because I love stuff like that, especially if like you see stuff like that and it's caught in the episode. It's funny and stuff like that when they kind of keep stuff like in there. It's like, you know, I don't know if maybe Elodie kept breaking every take, or maybe it's like that's the only like coverage they had for that take, and so it's like we got to use it. You know, I always wonder about stuff like that. But either way, they set up all this stuff to be like, oh, we're going here, and they lie just to see if, all right, like, to prove their theory right, and they're across the street in, like, a restaurant or whatever, and they see Jeremy pull up to the place they claim to be, so it's like, right, it confirms him, he's FBI, he was spying on us, like, all the stuff, you know, it's like, right, this is what this is all about. So, once again, have to keep the cameras in, which complicates things for Fiona later on when she's with JD and she's had to like walk on pins and needles and be careful about what she says around that place. So let's focus on JD and Fiona. Like, obviously they're kind of building back their rapport, and their rapport was always good, but building up their relationship again. And obviously she's very like, oh, let's not talk about any of that stuff, you know, Camilla and Giselle, like, let's not kind of focus on that. In fact, she ends up kissing him. He's like, are you trying to change the subject? But obviously once they leave the house is when she's able to kind of comfortably talk about it. So her and JD actually go to the place where it's like, oh, this is where the others were, but then the place got like spotlessly clean. There's no one there anymore. Which initially I thought, I didn't blame Fiona, because like they wouldn't jump the gun just for her. We thought Tony kind of goes like, it's because of the raids that happened in the episode. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thought it was just like, oh, like every so often they're shifting places, just how they keep this place on the run. Just constantly keeping it on the move, maybe like every couple of days, maybe every week or so. That was my theory last episode of why like Camilla and her mom weren't there. It's like, yeah, that's just how they operate. But it's like, no, like this was just kind of it still could have been, but because of the raid, they ended up moving a lot of stuff around. So it's like, okay, our only means of finding Camilla and Giselle, hopefully that girl like gave that message to Camilla, like, right, that Fee's like, yo, like I'm looking for you, like you're not alone. So maybe she can find some means of reaching out and giving them an idea where to find her. I don't know. Because without that, like, they have no other clues. But it's also sucked with that situation, too, because Fee was blaming herself. It's like, that guy told me to get out of here, and it's like, I did, but it's like, did me showing up screw this up? Like, the fact is, we have no idea how to even begin looking for them. It's like, there's so many people here. It's like, right, they're not trapped, but they are trapped. It's like, yeah, like, you're not being held hostage here in regards of, like, you're locked up and chained to the bed. It's like, yeah, all these people are like, bunched together. But it's also, like, that they're so... My initial thought was, like, Fee was going to make the point of they're so desperate to try and, like, stay here and do what they need to that they won't run away. I thought that's the point where she was making, but which still could be of, like, they're trapped in regards of that's the only way they're going to be able to stay in this country. And it's also, like, you're mixed up with cartel people, and you kind of have to do what they say. There's no, like, rebuttal or going against that, so... It still fits with the narrative, speaking of, like, what Fee was saying of, like, they're not trapped, but they are still, in fact, trapped, you know? So, it's going to be interesting to see where that side of things end up going, but picking up with the Ramona side of things, she seems to be doing a lot better. In fact, she's doing so good that she actually wants to bring Tony further into the fold, but Tony's like, no, I'm good. But she's like, no. You told me you wanted to be a part of my organization. It's like, yeah, that was back when you tried to kill me, remember? So I had to do whatever it takes to, you know, get on your good side. And I'm on your good side. So we're square. I saved your life. You're thankful. Just let me go. I just want to be with my family and want to know they're safe. And Ramona kind of brings up something I think I've brought up too, broached the point of her and Tony, there's a lot of parallels. She's like, right, I was like you. I tried to do the right thing and trying to protect my family. But you know what I learned? You need power. Power is how you protect what's yours. And it's like, you, Tony, are like me. At least I'm up in front about who I am. I might wear a mask that is Sensata, but you wear different masks. And Tony's like, yeah, I do. But that doesn't change, because she's like, oh, you want the power too. And it's like, well, Tony somewhat has a knack for it. It is like, you know, she learned a lot. She can, like, she has that do whatever it takes to survive mentality. That, like, I think a lot of people can agree, like, that mentality isn't, like, you know, an immigrant, like, mentality of, like, you work and grind, you do whatever it takes to get what you... I mean, she's shown that time and time again, what she's gone through to protect and, like, save Luca's life, crossing so many lines. It's proof of that mentality and that, like, that ethic in her where it's, like, I'm not going to, like, I want to try to do the right thing, but if I have to do a little bad just to protect what's mine, I will. So... she has that wherewithal, so you can see why it's like, right, Ramona, like, sees a lot in that and respects her. It's like, well, I mean, that didn't stop you from threatening to kill her and her family on multiple occasions, but, you know, come on, that's water under the bridge, even though it's severely not. So Ramona kind of made it clear. It's like, at the end of the day, the decision's mine to make, but I'm going to let you know, Tony, I don't want to quite let you go yet. It's like, okay, you made yourself a little, that's the problem, you made yourself a little too useful. It's kind of interesting, once again, direct parallel to, like, the Ottoman situation. Like, you made yourself a little too useful to him. You were too good. I mean, that's the whole point. You play into it like, oh, I want to be indispensable so that you can't, you know, dispense of me. So... But now it's like, yeah, you're too good and you've done too stellar of a job, and now Ramona doesn't want to let you go. Artemon, you can let that go because it's like, well, you still need it to like protect Luke and stuff. You don't need those reasons with Ramona. It's just, I don't want this crazy lady anywhere near me and my family. I can keep my mouth shut. We would just go our separate ways. I live a quiet life. It's like, nah, you're not. You're not just going to walk away from all of this. So, but yeah, we had the FBI raids, which I wasn't, when Russo showed up, I was like, interesting. I was like, I assumed she was like undercover, and then she immediately was like, oh yeah, like, oh, you met me. It's like, I was like, oh, has she run into Russo as an FBI agent? But it's like, all right, saw you at Nadia's club. I was like, okay, good. And then she was like, yeah, I'm an FBI agent. I was like, fuck. Because also at the same time, you're like, the argument could have been like, I'm sure that also like send off like red flags into Ramona's mind later on when it seems like, hey, there's a connection between Nadia and Russo, but it's like, also the fact that she was also at your workplace, I'm sure that sold it even more in Ramona's mind. But yeah, like every place gets raided. Her art gallery gets raided. Her own house gets raided. Jorge's work gets raided. And it's like, luckily nothing's there tying them together to the cartel and stuff. But it's still, they're a little too close for comfort. As I don't know if they've just been able to disconnect themselves so well in the past that because like no one even pieced together like Ramona or Jorge to all of this until now. And the only reason why they're even gotten this far is because of Jeremy. He's the one that pieced a lot of stuff together because it isn't just on Tony, but Tony's kind of like the linchpin to this because he connected all of this because it's like, well, who's connected to the cartel? Who are some people that are connected to the cartel? And he's worked with people that are connected to the cartel. He also ended up being Nadia's lawyer. So it's like there are other pieces to it that have kind of like led to all of this. But like I said, Tony and Jeremy used Tony to be the linchpin to this whole investigation. So, and now Ramona is kind of out for blood because like, yo, who screwed us over? And when she got the paperwork, I'm like, is she? At first, I was like, is it a photo of Jeremy and Tony? But it's like Jeremy's so deep undercover, no one knows. And to be fair, like Russo has done a good job of probably keeping that very need to know basis, where it's like probably only person who knows about Jeremy is maybe a select few people. Might even just be like, nah, I'm the only one that knows about Jeremy being an agent. So even to the point she was like, yeah, you need to kind of like duck away. Like last episode, she was like, make sure you're not around the office a lot. So, and I think that's kind of benefited because Ramona has someone named Derek who's super in the know about all this stuff. He's the one that got the information about the deal between Russo and Nadia, which even Nadia put it later on. She never signed the deal, but I guess it's like the paperwork was already like signed up, and all Russo needed was her signature. So it's like, yeah, Russo kind of screwed the pooch on that because I guess it's like you never expect anyone to get access to that, but it's still kind of like you shouldn't have done that, especially when Nadia. But it's like I think she was so certain that she could put Nadia in such a position where it's like, well, you're already putting yourself in this position, and I just added more pressure for you to take my deal. But she probably never expected Nadia not to take the deal, so she thought it was such a surefire thing of like, I got this locked and loaded. All I need is like her consent and her go ahead and her signature to be like, yo, I've got this. Or maybe it's just because it seems like the paperwork was filed, but maybe it was on file but never like officially filed. So maybe that's kind of like the workaround to that. Because Nadia said it herself. She's like, I never like the moment Russo kind of presented herself to be like she's not going to look out for Armand's best interest. I was just like, no, I'm not going to take your deal. So, but it's kind of a moot point because now Ramona, who already has issues with you because it's like, right, you're the person that just like. Well, she kind of let stuff with Tony go because it's like, well, you saved my life. And now it's like, whoa, Nadia, it's like, well, twofold. It's like, well, I've kind of screwed you over and you're kind of in the position you are in. You already have beef with me because of the whole Armand thing, so you're not going to be forgiving me anytime soon. Plus, she's got like, even though she tried to make it seem like everything was super kosher last episode, there's still that twinge of, feels like you're taking my brother away from me. And it's like, it does, even though he promised he wasn't going to cut me out, it feels like he is. Like, Jorge's making his own moves. And she doesn't like that because it's like, once again, it's about power. And it's like, well, when it comes down to it, would he choose Nadia over me? In the past, she'd be like, no, like with Familia, that's not the case. But Jorge, I think, kind of likes Nadia, you're almost wondering, like, could something happen? I'm sure Nadia's not really ready to jump into another relationship, but it's also like, it's weird because, you know, if anything happens, it's like, well, you're dating your now, like, deceased husband's cousin. It's just like, that's such a slippery, weird slope. I could see it, like, there's moments there, but I think it's just kind of nice having someone in each other's lives, like, whereas, like, she has very few people she can rely on, and Jorge continues to be the person she can, and him having, like, a smart, capable confidant like her, and it's like, yeah, you can be the brains of the operation of what he's building. He's like, I'm gonna build this not only for me, I'm gonna make my life what it is with this business, but you're the one that's gonna run things. You're gonna be the face of the operation because you're good with people. You're able to get people to do what you need them to do. Plus, you have the contacts. I've seen what you are capable of, Nadia. You'll be set for life, and so for her, it's like this is her first true taste of freedom because she got a new place in everything, and it's like, right, she's trying to leave everything behind, start fresh after everything that, you know, as she told the guy when she got the house, it's like, yeah, been a complicated and rough couple of weeks. I don't think Jorge would betray his sister. Well, I was about to have to take that back. We know, like, he's willing to kind of throw Ramona to the wolves to some extent just to keep working with Nadia. So it's not like Ramona's completely off basis. He'd still never want his sister dead, but it's like, I could kind of throw you to the wolves a little bit and kind of ensure me and Nadia kind of get to do our own thing. But it's still the thing of he might not completely, like, cast her aside, but he still is willing to make sure Nadia is taken care of. He's like, oh, let me talk to Nadia. It's like, should we really be worrying about her right now? It's like, yeah, but I want her to know, like, nothing's changed, everything's good. I don't want her to learn this from someone else. It's like moments like that made Ramona, like, you care about this woman a little too much. It's like, you're the one that invited her in being like, oh, she's familiar, but now it's like she's potentially taking your brother from you. Now it's like, well, also, she wanted nothing to do with you after she found out you had something to do with Armand and you're responsible for what happened to Armand. Like, now that she's not completely under your control like you felt like your brother was, now, like, once again, she kind of turns sour against those who slip underneath that umbrella that is her power and influence. It's like, no, I kind of run things, and if you kind of don't fall in line, we have an issue. Because Tony thought she was screwed when Ramona was like, yeah, I figured out who it was. And it's like, yeah, she thinks it's Nadia. And, like, bless Tony for trying to do everything she can. It's like, no. This doesn't seem like Nadia. Let me talk to her first. But if she's an issue, I can take care of her myself. When she goes to talk to Nadia, and Nadia admits everything, it's like, why didn't you come to me? She's like, why would I? Because it was all a moot point at that point in time, because I turned down the deal, plus, you know, Armand ended up dying. But it's also like, sadly, at that time, she didn't trust Tony because Tony, like, was involved with the cartel, and which is so ironic because, like, the beef you had with her at the time was like the cartel stuff was happening behind her back and she couldn't trust you. Now you're in bed with the same person you had beef with at the time, being like, oh, like, that person, that point of contact was Jorge, who you're now in business with. So it's kind of like that's also a moot point too. So it's funny how strange bedfellows type of situations, you know, that kind of ends up happening. So either way, now that Tony tried to talk to Nadia, who's like, right, you don't know everything, Tony. Because I guess Nadia was kind of referencing, like, you don't know what power plays I'm making, what moves I'm making with Jorge, and what I've got planned. But it's like, well, she knows enough to know, like, you have a target on your back, but she didn't want to tell you. Because it's like, well, if I could talk Ramona off the cliff, like, of pulling the trigger on this, it's going to be a moot point. It's like, Ramona's like, no, I've already set someone is. It's like, using the boys, for example, you pulled a soldier boy at YourNerdGasm. It was like, I gave you 3 minutes, and it's been 3 minutes. So, oh well, what happens, happens. So, Tony's got this conversation she's having with Fee about what she wants to do, and it's like, don't get in the middle of it. But Tony cares about her and Nadia. Like, yeah, they started off friendly-ish at the beginning of the series when they first got introduced, and then they kind of had her falling out because it's like, oh, you're someone that cares about my husband cares about you. And it's like, it's always been this recurring beef between them. And it, you know, you thought like losing Armand would like bring them closer together, kind of tore them even further apart in some senses. But when it's all said and done, like, it's still the thing of, you're an innocent person and all this. You shouldn't have to die for something. Like, you were just doing to try and find your husband, the man that you love. And it's also like, right, we're both bound by our love for Armand. And it's like, he would want, like, Armand would want her to be safe. So I'm going to do what I can to protect her. So it's like, well, what is Tony going to do? I was like, she's obviously got to fake her death, right? I just wasn't sure how she was going to go about it. But it's like, right, slow down her heart. At the same time, like, all that's going down, like, Fee's talking loudly on the phone and even, like, pulling up on her map, like, on her phone, like, oh, where Tony's going. I'm like, okay, so you want Jeremy to know. But I was like, at first I was like, are you going to try and have Jeremy and the killer show up there at the same time Jeremy killed the guy? Like, I wasn't sure what the plan was. But it's like, no. Now that this is all said and done, Tony has presented herself as a killer. She's like, oh, she proved herself to Ramona while also protecting Nadia, but also Jeremy was there and she struck a deal with him. Seems like Jeremy's keeping that close to the vest too, because it's unclear how much Russo knows. Russo knows that he was there, but it's like, oh, like, kind of let him wave, like, this guy has nothing to do with this investigation. But I'm like, does she know about Nadia? Because she had that look on her face almost like she felt bad, because she's the one that also told Nadia, like, oh, things are going to end badly if you don't take my deal. And it's like, oh, lo and behold, they did. So, but that's when I'm like, I don't know if Russo was brought into the fold about this. It's also like, kind of have to be careful, because she found out about Nadia, so you don't know, like, whoever is connected to the cartel, like, is high up enough to get access to this stuff. Whoever, Derek is. Maybe we've met him before and they've talked about him before, but I don't know who Derek is and what his, like, power and position is for him to be able to get this type of information to Ramona. Once again, she's powerful and influential to a lot of people, so she has a lot of contacts that can pull through like this. So, but like, maybe Derek isn't someone we're supposed to outwardly know. Maybe the name will come up and be relevant in another episode or something that will really showcase, like, oh, okay, this is who Derek is, and kind of showing once again the type of people and contacts that Ramona has, besides judges and yada yada yada, so on and so forth. Sad thing too is that because of the deal and everything, obviously, like, Nadia is dead, and ultimately her the deal, like, the thing she was going to set up with Jorge kind of fell through, because Ramona made it clear, like, Jorge doesn't need to know. Kind of going back to that point of, she knows Jorge would not sign off on it because he cares about Nadia. He'd defend her a lot. Like, even if she was like, right, there's a chance she might be, like, working with the FBI. Like, if Nadia probably presented her story to Jorge, I think he's Jorge will do what needs to be done, but regardless of it all, he's shown time and time again that he can be a lot more soft-hearted than his sister. Like, she's, like, Ramona's presented herself to be the full-blown sociopath of the family. That she's super cutthroat. But yeah, the deal Tony struck with Jeremy was, right, I can be your inside person. You just have to make Nadia disappear. And yeah, it's now official. They were able to make it happen. But Nadia is not as receptive as Tony was hoping. I mean, it's like, right, I saved your life. It's like, even, like, this is all Jeremy's fault. Like, Tony wasn't working with the feds. She only found out about Jeremy, but figured she could use this to her benefit. So interesting, too, because, like, twofold things. One, Fiona was telling her, like, right, you want to get your hands bloody, which she didn't, but she probably will in the long run, because I'm like, she's definitely going to kill Ramona, and that's going to be an issue later. I doubt she's going to tell Jorge the truth. It's like, you kind of have to keep him in the dark, because for one, Ramona can't know the truth, because he won't be able to hide it if he finds out about what Ramona was going to do to Nadia. So there's that. But once again, if something happens to Ramona, despite everything, not unless it ends up being a thing of Jorge ends up killing Ramona to, like, go for the power grab. Who knows? That could still be a possibility. But the other thing is, Nadia, like I said, is not too receptive, because basically she's like, you killed me. But because I'm dead, I'm like, Nadia is dead. I can never be Nadia again, which is like, oh, I'm still alive, but who I was, everything that I was, what was supposed to be a fresh start to me, which was the irony, because now she does have a fresh start. She just can't be herself. Every contact, everything she's built for herself, name-wise and recognition, all that goes down the toilet, like all that she built. Because also being Nadia, despite moving on, still tied you to everything connected to Armand. It's like, by saying Nadia is gone, everything that made me who I am at my core is, because I'm like, I don't remember if her parents are still alive. Are they? I don't remember. Maybe they're not, because that doesn't really come up too often, like her parents. So I think, because they didn't show up to Armand's funeral, so it's like, I think her parents aren't alive, but it's still like, right, your name carries a lot of weight. It isn't just words. It's a personification of everything that she is, and now that's gone, and the life she was building for herself, and now that's all down the toilet. What she was building with Jorge, it's like, yeah, you're still alive, but it's still like I have to start from scratch. I have to start from the bottom again. As we yeah, because we learned that she was that type of, we learned from like conversations she had with Armand in the past. Like, yeah, she was that's how her and Armand know each other, because like they both kind of have that mentality of, we started from the bottom, we scratched our ways to the top to be where we are. Her in particular with her story. So I don't fully remember the details, but I definitely remember her coming from like a poorer background and having to scrounge and scrape to get everything in life. Like, she's going to be extra motivated not to forgive Tony, but it's like Tony did the best thing she could. Once again, in a situation that she's going to partially blame herself, because it's like, I should have figured Jeremy out, but it's like Jeremy's the one that set all this in motion. So, because if he hadn't knocked over that domino, if Russo hadn't come after like Ramona at the time, things wouldn't have gotten to where they have. So it's a complicated mess all around. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, once again, the season's already done, so there's only 2 episodes left. Because obviously I'm getting this like super late, because I didn't even realize like how far behind I was with the show. I'm far behind on so much. But yeah, 2 more episodes to see how this all plays out and eventually wraps up. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.